This is episode 41 with Alison Cardy.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Brian Tier.
Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, episode 41 today, and I'm really excited to be speaking to Alison Cardy. Now, in case you haven't heard of her, Alison is a career change specialist who helps young adults navigate career crossroads and then pivot to find more fulfilling work. But before taking on this role, Alison was an unhappy quarter lifer herself, stuck at a desk as an accountant. Rather than sitting there feeling miserable for herself, she decided to start trying different things and experimenting with jobs and opportunities that interested her. Throughout this experimentation, Alison developed a love for coaching and helping others, which she now does in her career coaching practice. Now, this episode was a little different as we used a case study throughout the interview to demonstrate how to apply the wisdom that Alison shared. This interview is packed with actionable steps for figuring out what it is you actually want to do and then taking the small steps necessary to start making it happen. In this interview, you're going to learn why it's so common to feel stuck in your career, how to differentiate between knowing when to quit versus giving up too early, how to navigate a career crossroads using our live case study, the 4 prongs of career exploration, the quickest way to get more info about a job, and Alison's thoughts on taking a gap year mid-career. As always, you can get the links and resources we mentioned in this episode at briantier.com/041. But for now, let's go hang out with Alison. Welcome back, everyone, and a big welcome to today's guest. I'm speaking to Alison Cardy. Alison, welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be speaking to you and to be getting your expertise on this topic, which we'll get into a sec. But before we get into that, I wonder if you could tell people listening a little bit about who is Alison Cardy and your quarter life story.
Sure. Well, I definitely went through a quarter life crisis of my own. I remember sitting in a particular office building in the basement level, overlooking a parking garage. So it was like cold and there were no windows, and I was in a conference room. I was working as a government auditor. So I was looking at financial statements and making tick marks and totally bored out of my mind. I had watched a whole lot of Oprah growing up, and Oprah had said, follow your passion, find your passion. And I knew for a fact that accounting was not my passion. In fact, I really actively disliked it. So I was sitting in that room, and I always like to put a little asterisk. There's nothing wrong with accounting. It just wasn't a great fit for me. And I was really trying to figure out, well, if not this, then what? What's going to be a better fit for me? And I really got stuck there for at least 2, if not 3 years, going back to the office, getting kind of upset at night, trying to figure out what I was doing. And eventually I got a little bit smarter. Instead of just coming home and researching things, or I was journaling a lot at the time. I was cleaning out a closet a couple of years ago, and there was just a stack of printouts and journals and thoughts from that time in my life. And eventually I got a little bit smarter, and I started actually doing things. So I began volunteering at a crisis and suicide hotline because I thought that I liked people stuff and counseling. And that was really a big catalyst for me because I had never done that type of work before, but I found out that not only did I really like being in that supportive role, but I was also quite good at it. So it was validating and encouraging. And so from there, I eventually went through a coach training, started a business a bit naively, just kind of fell into it. And then I've been working as a career coach for going on 8 years with a specialty in helping people who are at a career crossroads and stuck there, just like I was, figure out what they want to be doing, why they're stuck, how to get moving, and really just to give them more clarity and momentum so that they can get on with their life. I always say, let's get the career piece sorted out so you can move on to more interesting problems.
Yeah. So just so that we're all on the same page, you probably define a career crossroads as having worked in a job for a little while and realizing it's not it, but you're not quite sure what it is. Is that kind of accurate?
That is spot on. I'm glad it came across.
Cool. So, yeah, I mean, careers is probably something that really personifies the quarter life crisis, and it's probably the most common sort of issue or challenge that people in this generation face. So why is it so common that so many people are sort of feeling stuck in their careers, especially in their 20s?
Well, for one thing, there are a lot of factors that go into careers. So if you think about it, up till, in most cases, if people are going for university degrees, like early 20s, your life has been school and education and following a particular set out trajectory. And then, when you enter the workforce, that's a really big transition that you may or may not have prepared for while in school. I know for myself, it was something I had given really no thought to. So that can happen to people. Some folks, if you're in an environment growing up, like say you love engineering and your family supports it and they put you in great programs and you get great internships and you love it, you just kind of sail through, no problem. But a lot of times there can be a conflict between the social environment, meaning the family or the professors or, who's around you and what you're really wanting to do, which can, cause a conflict and get people stuck somewhere where they don't want to be. Also, you just may not have experienced the thing that you want to be doing yet. So just because you're kind of newer to the workforce, you might not have ever had an experience that you really enjoyed or just had enough different types of work under your belt to be able to maneuver to that place that you want to be.
It's interesting you mention that, because I think a lot of people will feel like this isn't what I want to be doing. But is there kind of a fine line between giving it time to really develop versus throwing in the towel too early? Or how do we sort of balance those two scenarios?
Good question. Let me think about it for a sec. So I think that in terms of people that I talk to, I always ask folks, like on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being you could stay in this job for another 10 years, and 10 being we need to get you out of here yesterday, where are you? So for somebody who's kind of a 5 or lower, meaning that the day-to-day is okay, it's maybe not great, but they can kind of palate it, then that could be an instance where it would make sense to retain the current job and income source while exploring on the side. If you're at a 5 or above, or maybe 6 or above, where it's really a toxic situation, or like deep down in your gut that something's off and wrong, then you can still use the approach of taking some time to figure it out while keeping your job, but you might want to be more aggressive about it. You can also leave a job, throw in the towel. As you said, definitely think about the consequences of doing it. I wouldn't advise everybody go do that tomorrow, but that is a choice that you can make if you really need to switch things up.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I love it. So something that I want to do, I want to switch things up myself in this interview. And rather than just sort of bombard you with questions, I think it would be quite interesting for people listening if we treat this kind of like a case study. And having 8 years plus of experience yourself, I'm sure you're well equipped to roll with that. So let's make up a fictitious character or young adult quarter lifer here. Let's say we've got someone called James. And James has been doing, let's say, accounting for 2 years. And he's dreading going to work in the morning. He's working most of the day, coming home and not really making time for the things that he really enjoys. Where does James start? How does he sort of navigate that career crossroads?
Great question. I have so much I want to tell you, so hopefully I can break it down, piece by piece.
Let's get into it.
So, yeah, the first thing that I would want James to consider is that our careers affect three big areas of our life. They affect our level of fulfillment, our financial health, and our personal time and well-being. I'm lumping that as one category. And if you think about it, in the workforce, there's almost like a career seesaw in effect, where on one side of the seesaw is financial compensation, and on the other side is level of fulfillment and personal time / well-being. So in general, not absolutely, but in general, these move in opposition. So for jobs that require really long hours, special education, more responsibility, higher stress, higher risk, all these things that kind of affect our well-being or our enjoyment of our day-to-day in a negative way, we often compensate financially for those factors. And the inverse is also true. For things that are more inherently enjoyable, there's less of a need for society to compensate financially to get people into those positions. So generally, they move up and down in opposition. If you just think about like emergency room nurses working the night shift, nobody really wants to work the night shift, but we pay time and a half to get people into those spots because we need it. So the first thing I want James to think about is if he had to pick in those three areas, and I know everybody wants to be happy, healthy, and wealthy, like we all want that, but if you had to pick a priority in terms of those three, what's in the lead for him? So this is going to be, there's not a right or a wrong answer. It's really a personal choice and personal preference based on kind of your life history, your experiences, your values. And you really want to think, okay, if I had to pick, do I care most? It's often a toggle between fulfillment or financial health. Like what's most important? If James came from a family where maybe money was tight growing up all the time, and he knows in his heart that he's like, I really want to get that paycheck squared away and solid because that's what I care about at this point, then that's going to lead him in one direction. If he's like, screw the financial piece, what I really care about is just enjoying my day-to-day, making a difference, having a great life, then that's going to lead him in another direction. So I think the first thing is just to get clear. If you had to rank them in terms of what your current job is giving you in rank them 1 to 3, with 1 being what you're most getting and 3 being what you're least getting. And then notice what you're wanting, again, with 1 being what you most want and 3 being what you least want. Notice if there's a disparity. If there isn't, if they're matching up, then it might just be making peace with where you are and, working on other parts of your life. If there is a mismatch, then that's an indicator we want to make a change. Yeah. Now, that was...
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No. Carry on.
Okay, I have more, but did you have anything before I go on?
No, I can hold.
Okay. So then the next thing, I'm going to assume that there's a disparity. Mm-hmm. That for some reason, the job that he has doesn't match up with what he wants in life. So the next thing to consider is there are kind of 4 prongs of career exploration, and they kind of vary in terms of level of intensity. So the first prong in terms of trying to figure out what you want is just to do some reflection. And this is, I think, the most common career advice that's given. Just answer these questions and you're going to magically come up with an answer. If James had never thought about what he wanted before, and he didn't have any charge around those questions, he could sit down, answer some. He might come up with, oh, I love being outdoors. Maybe I want to do something that's more physical or outdoorsy. So that could work for him. If it does, great. If that doesn't work for James, the next thing that he wants to do, and I was listening to one of your excellent podcasts, Brian, is take the advice of Jenny Blake, which is experiment. Okay, if you're not really sure what you want, this is what I did. Try on some different things, like maybe volunteer, take a side project, talk to somebody in industries that you're considering, and try to get more data points on yourself in different situations to help clarify what you're wanting. So he might go talk to a forest ranger and realize, this job is really boring or really lonely, and I like being around people. This isn't right, but maybe something around people is going to be a better fit. So you kind of clarify through experimenting. It's a great strategy. I think that's like the second most like new age career strategy is just try stuff.
Yeah. Can I jump in there? Sorry, Alison.
Oh, yes, go for it. I have more, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And please keep those fresh in your mind. What I was going to say about the first one is what I love about that is you can kind of keep coming back to that at different stages of your career. So maybe now you might want to knuckle down and just save as much money as you can. But in 5 years' time, you might want to focus more on fulfillment. So that I really like that exercise. And then what you said now about experimenting, like and I think I'm actually going to jump into James's shoes now for the rest of the interview. But if I'm James, like I could say, well, I work my whole day. I don't have time to experiment. But then coming out of James's shoes again, you could say like, well, speaking to people is such a great option because it's so easy to look at people, especially with things like Instagram now, and see all the good parts of a job. But actually there might be components of it that you really wouldn't like and that are massive value clashes. So I think that's really valuable as well as if you can't actually go and job shadow or try a job, like at least speak to people in that situation.
Oh, I want to like throw up my hands and say, yes, informational interviewing is by far the quickest shortcut to getting more information about a job. It is so beneficial. It gets you away from sitting behind a computer screen. And opportunities always flow through people. So we want to get you in front of people who can tell you about the hidden Facebook group of this type of industry professionals or the job search board or just more about the day-to-day that you might not be considering. So it's a great hack. I will note that even though it is less time consuming than, say, picking up a volunteer gig or a side project, a lot of people and some of your listeners are going to feel hesitant about asking for help or, telling the world that you don't know everything yet and you need a little bit of more information. And I would just encourage anybody listening to get over it. Ask for help. Know that not everybody's going to respond to you. Make sure you follow up. So if you don't get a response the first go around, ask again. It's going to boost your percentage of responses by a bunch. And just really push yourself out of your comfort zone to ask for help, to ask other people. It's going to be hugely beneficial.
All right, cool. Let's carry on with the other points you were going to mention.
Definitely. So the first two strategies are things that you can pretty much kind of self-manage. You can reflect and make a little hypothesis about what you want. Then you can go talk to people, experiment, try things on. Great. If James can do all those things, he should be kind of starting to get some momentum and moving forward. Now, if he's having trouble, and it's okay if you're having trouble with those steps, the next level is to get a sounding board, to actually talk through your current and past experiences with somebody like a career coach. You could do it with a really supportive friend as well. But if you can get in front of somebody who's non-judgmental, who doesn't have an agenda, who can be really curious and attentive and basically add their brain to your brain and kind of help you to make connections, maybe see things that you're taking for granted. So often the things that we love can be right in front of us, but we take them as just so normal, we don't even notice them. So if you're getting stuck on the first two steps, the next step, you kind of skip the first two and jump to the third one, which is to add somebody else's brain to your situation. And I always think of that step as like taking an out of focus telescope and putting it into focus. Just by talking it through and not being alone with it, you're going to get a lot of value. And then if that doesn't work, the last kind of tier is you need a little bit more support. There's probably some confounding factors that are making it harder than normal to figure this out. So it's sort of like if you're about to go train for a 5K and you're going into it with an ache in your hip or a sprained ankle. We have to fix the sprained ankle or the ache in your hip before you're going to actually be able to train and to do those earlier steps that I mentioned. In this case, there could be somebody who draws a total blank on those reflection questions. Like they start trying to fill them out and they just zone out and stare into space. They want to go experiment and take action, but they just never seem to do it. Something's in the way. If you resonate with that, you really want a career professional by your side. I am particularly partial to my own team. We do a great job with this type of work. But you want somebody who can help you to heal what is hurting and or to break the chain that is keeping you from being able to move forward. And that's there's nothing wrong with it. It's just you want to be honest with yourself. If you're having trouble with the first 2 steps, if just talking it through isn't enough, then there just might be something else going on. Maybe your family is at total odds with what you want and you're feeling blocked from even considering it. Maybe you just came out of a really tough work experience and your confidence is down and you need somebody to help you to reconnect you to what's great about you. Maybe just you had an idea of a job that you thought would be wonderful and you shot it down in your own head before you even gave it a chance. And you need somebody to help you with the mindset piece. Maybe you need to overcome some fear. There's all sorts of reasons, but then you really need somebody by your side to get you through that. And man, we can really move people through it a lot faster than they ever would if they keep wandering through the top 2 levels and not realizing that they need some additional help.
Yeah, something you touched on there that I'd love to hear your thoughts on is, and you and I probably both experienced it, and I know a lot of people, including James, so let's jump back into him. What if he says well, my dad was an accountant and my brothers all do real jobs. How do I tell them that this isn't what I want to do?
Great question. So the first thing I would say to James is don't start there. Don't start with trying to convince the people around you of what you want to do. The first thing I would offer is to if you have the idea that you want to do something different, almost treat it like a little baby egg. It's still the germ of an idea. Let's keep it safe. So let's keep it in to yourself, explore it with people who are supportive. So maybe talking to people in the industry, getting more of a sense of it, trying to figure out a bit of a plan, and let that egg hatch a little bit and get a little bit of strength before you put it in front of people in your life who have a really strong force in your mind's eye. We don't want to put a little baby chick right in front of somebody who's going to smash it. We want to let it grow a little bit and then bring it up and say, this is where I am, when you can be stronger behind it.
Mm-hmm. And so let's say I'm going to be James now and you're my coach. Yeah. I've figured out that I don't want to do accounting anymore. I actually think I want to do, let's think for an example. Yeah. I actually want to become a chef. Do you recommend I jump in wholeheartedly and start studying something, or should I start developing this on the side while I'm still doing my accounting?
So James, I'm going to throw it back to you. What is your risk tolerance and what feels most in line with your goals in life? So I think sometimes people think about making a career change. Sorry about that. Making a career change as an all or nothing kind of thing. You have to drop one thing and move to the other. You can take that approach, but a lot of times when I work with clients, they find it really helpful to think about short-term and long-term goals. So in the short term, what is the next step that you're seeing that feels like it will give you more information? If you need more information, will help you to check yourself if you're on the right path. Maybe it's taking a course on the side. Maybe it's working weekends at a restaurant to get a feel for it. And then what's the longer term goal, to actually be a chef? And then we can build towards it. So there's not one right or wrong answer. It's really dependent on you as James, like your preference and your particular risk tolerance and goals in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think it's so easy to get caught up in all the sort of overly motivational social media stuff where it's like jump and the net will appear. Or I think I spoke to, who was it? It was either Dr. Caitlin Fass or one of my other guests, and we were speaking about this. It's like, it's so easy to get caught up in the, like, just quit and everything will become clear. But that's a really, really dangerous place to be in. So anyway, I love that you mentioned, it depends on you again. How much of gut feel do you teach your clients? How important is that in this whole process?
It is very important. Of course, whatever career decision that we make is going to be for that client, that person in front of us. So we really want to be attuned to who they are and what they're wanting. One tool that we use a lot is just checking in with how you're physically responding to different career possibilities. So it's not to say that we're going to check in with the gut and then follow it blindly. It's just like one other helpful data point, particularly around career stuff. People can get so stuck up in their heads. They can think themselves into circles. They can think about what other people are going to think about their choices, and they can just kind of get a little jumbled. So when that's happening, it's really appropriate to just take a few breaths and say, okay, let's notice, what was a really negative work experience? What did that feel like? What was a really positive work or school or extracurricular experience? What did that feel like in your body? And then say we're considering James, going to be a chef. What does that feel like? What's the physical response? And that's just, it can sometimes be like snap your fingers, so clarifying when you've been in your head so jumbled. And then it's like, oh, that physically feels right. It's like sitting in my body. I'm breathing easily. My shoulders drop. There's a little smile on my face. Nobody has a magic 8-ball. I don't have a magic 8-ball. I wish I did. Nobody can tell you for certain that a particular path is going to work out. But that gut feel can be a really good guidance that, okay, we're on a good track.
I actually do have a magic 8-ball, but I'm not sure I would use it for career choice. All right. So Alison, two of the most popular ways that people try and figure out their career, which I'd love to get your opinion on. The first one is, if we're James again, should I take a bit of a gap year? I never took a gap year before college or before university. Should I take a year off to travel and try and get some clarity on my career in that way?
Ooh, I love this. Nobody's ever asked me this before, Brian. I have some thoughts on this. So,
me too.
Okay, I'm curious for yours as well. That is really interesting. And I think you've done this, so you might be more the one to speak to it. But I think it can be okay if it's done purposefully. Much like grad school can be okay and helpful if it's done purposefully. So if you're taking a gap year or going to grad school, so many people, I think, fall into law school or a graduate program just because they don't know what they want to do. And so they think, oh, this is going to fill me in and magically show me. And then they come out the other side of the graduate school, and I'm assuming you could easily come out the other side of a gap year and still be just as confused and just as uncertain about what you want to be doing.
Yeah, and minus your long-term savings.
Oh, yes. Yes, I have a colleague who's a career coach, and she is like, please come talk to me before you go to grad school. It will save you so much money. Just to think about it a little bit ahead of time. So if you go into those situations with an attitude of living in the moment and enjoying it, they're not going to actually be all that strategic in terms of setting you up for success on the other side. They could be a wonderful life experience, but in terms of helping your career development, So what I'd really recommend is, if you're going to go that route, be very thoughtful about what experiments can I do? Who can I start to build relationships? What groups can I be a part of? How can I kind of give myself more data points, more information, and really use this time not only to, decompress from whatever work environment, but also to start building something. That's my 2 cents. What do you think on what I said?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the notion of quitting and then going to travel, it's kind of seen as a golden ticket and an easy way out. Well, I think it is the easy way out in terms of like thinking that it'll solve all your problems. But I've kind of changed I think traveling is really valuable, and I do think it teaches you a lot in terms of like shifting how you think about things and being more grateful for what you already have. And learning to think about things differently. But in terms of figuring out answers, I think, like you said, unless you do it purposefully, it can be, sorry to say this, but a big waste of time and money. You'll have a good time, but if what you're trying to do is figure out your next steps of your career, I don't think just getting on a plane and going somewhere is going to solve that necessarily. It might, but I don't think it should be a go-to. So that's I think you're probably far better off brainstorming things to try and sort of potential jobs to volunteer in or sort of shadow for a certain amount of time and use that time constructively. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts, what's coming up for me right now. And then the other one, so we spoke about traveling. Then the other one I think a lot of people try and find answers through is personality tests and defining themselves as a thing and then seeing like, oh, this says that I should be this and that. What is your opinion on personality tests?
I'm not a huge fan. Mm-hmm. And part of that is just probably my own personality. I don't like being put in boxes, and I don't like putting other people in boxes. So the thing with personality tests and a lot of online churn that people do is that it feels productive. You're like, okay, I have this problem. I'm going to start trying to figure it out. I'm going to take this test, or I'm going to answer these questions or whatever. And as I mentioned before, it can be an okay starting point, but if you just keep revisiting that type of work, you're actually spinning your wheels and you're not getting anywhere. It's kind of like staying in your comfort zone accidentally. Like, I don't think people mean to do it. It's just, oh, come home from work, I'm tired. Let me poke around on the internet. What are the top 10 jobs or whatever? That genre of work is not really that productive, even though it feels that way. So my 2 thoughts are, one, I'm much more a fan of individualized assessments, and that's what my team and I do. So instead of giving people or, trying to put people through a mass form, which is meant to be distributed to like thousands of people, and it does put people into boxes, we like to have a really in-depth conversation. And then I always find when you do that, we get so much more information and details that an instrument that was meant to be distributed to thousands of people, it just never could pick up on. They would never learn that the thing that you care about most is just freedom or whatever it is. Like these little bits that really make you you, they're not going to show up. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, let's take productive action. So let's do the things that move us out of our comfort zone a little bit. You can start with a personality test. You can start with some reflection questions, but don't stay there. You really need to move it into the real world. I can give you a great tip, which is there's a site called insidejobs.com. So if you take those tests and figure out some things that you like, poke around on insidejobs.com. Figure out what jobs are showing up that kind of make you lean forward in your chair. And then the next step is to actually move towards them. Get out of your home, talk to somebody, go attend a group, do something. And if you're struggling with that step of figuring out what you want or taking action, then know that that's really a signal that bringing in some reinforcement help is going to be very appropriate for you.
Yeah, I think the other thing with personality tests, I mean, I do like to do them now and again just to see what comes up. But I think if someone's really stuck and confused, it can almost make it worse, because now you're like, well, this is telling me I'm actually this type of person when I thought I was that type of person. So I think it can often do more harm than good. Alison, any...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say one other thing on that?
Yeah.
If you're looking at it like it is a magic 8-ball, like, oh, I just take this test and it's going to pop out the perfect answer. There is no such thing. So please, you can use them, but don't put absolute faith in them. They're not necessarily scientifically validated. They're just tests.
Yeah, and you said now there's no one correct answer. Like, I almost think as far as careers go, there's not that one thing that we're looking for. And Smiley Pozwalski speaks about this in the Quarter Life Breakthrough, where it's like, there's probably several different jobs that would bring you a lot of fulfillment and a sense of purpose. So it's almost to our detriment if we're trying to figure out, like, what's the one thing I'm meant to be doing. So
it's a false, it's a false belief that there's one thing, and it won't help you.
Alison, anything we haven't covered which you feel might be of value to people listening?
The only thing that's popping up for me is there's a metaphor that I really like to use with folks, which is if you are standing at the front door of an unfamiliar house on a neighborhood street late at night, you've never been there before, you walk inside the door, all the lights are out, you try the switches, you can't turn them on, and I pop up beside you and I say, hey, that thing that you're most wanting from your career is just out on the porch. If you just walk through the house and, find it, that's all you have to do. And I always ask people, like, do you think you could walk through the house with the lights out? And in this little metaphor, I give you a flashlight, and people are like, yeah, I could walk through it. And then I say, well, what if I put a blindfold on you? Then do you think you could do it? And obviously with a blindfold, even though it's the exact same situation, it feels scarier. It feels like, oh, maybe I'll just stay at this front door, my current career where I'm familiar. And really, with making a career change, you have to be willing to move through the house, to bump into a pot or a pan occasionally, to hit a dead end and turn around. You have to learn your way through the house, through that path that you've never been on before, and be willing to operate in a flashlight to blindfold level visibility to wind up where you want to be. And the lesson of this is you can get somewhere, even if you can't see it when you start out, if you actively and courageously engage with the parts that you can see. If you take a step forward, you bump into something and you're like, oh, that's not the way to go. Let me try this other way. You will eventually make your way to that better career path that you're looking for.
I love that metaphor. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Alison, we haven't touched on your book, but I'm guessing a lot of the stuff we mentioned is in there. So why don't you tell us a bit about what people can expect to find in your book, which is called Career Grease, How to Get Unstuck and Pivot Your Career.
Thank you. I would love to. My book, Career Grease, How to Get Unstuck and Pivot Your Career, is basically walking folks through the process of making a career change. Every chapter, there are 12 chapters, every chapter has a case study, and so it will show you somebody at the beginning of the process. It really focuses on the places people get stuck along the way and tells different stories and how they get through it. There are exercises, coaching tips. There are a lot of places in that metaphorical career change house where you can avoid bumping into things if you just kind of understand ahead of time. So it kind of sets out some warning cones, like watch out for this, and it will hopefully just make people's process a lot easier. Hopefully you can tell from my voice, I'm very encouraging. So the book is also very, let's give it a go. Let's get this done, guys. It's an encouraging tone as well.
Yeah, and those will be far better case studies than I could come up with in this podcast.
No, it's good.
Alison, I do want to be mindful of the time, but before we wrap up, I've got some sort of rapid fire questions I want to ask at the end here. The first one, and just first thing that comes to your head, you don't need to think too much about it, but what is something you wish you'd been told in your 20s?
That things pass. So I don't know if this is universal, but I remember sitting in that basement thinking that it was my entire life. I was going to be stuck there forever. Maybe I was a little bit overly dramatic. So I just would like to have known, and I would offer to anybody else in their 20s, that what you're experiencing right now is not forever. Seasons change, people grow, like you're going to grow and change. So you're going to be impacting things to make them different, but also just change is a constant in the world. So don't tell yourself a doom and gloom story that some unpleasant situation is going to be there forever, because it's not.
Cool. What is the greatest opportunity for quarter lifers today?
So the first thing that comes to my mind when you say that is you have 3/4 of your life left. Like, that's a huge opportunity. But I think in the coaching realm, my next thought is to build good foundational habits. And there's one habit in particular that it's not going to do everything for you, but it will get you pretty far. And that is a habit of doing scary things. So asking yourself, what's that next scary thing on the horizon? And then going and doing it. Get out of your comfort zone, make that a habit, and then your comfort zone will expand and the world will open up for you.
I love it. Alison, I have one more question, but before I get to that, what's the best way for people to get hold of you and find out more about the work you do with your practice and the book and all that good stuff?
Definitely. They can check us out at cardycareercoaching.com. That's Cardy, CARDY, careercoaching.com. And once you get there, you will notice that we also have a free resource. It's called the Step-by-Step Career Change e-course, and you can sign up for that. I try to be as helpful as possible to people. So this is actually a free 6-month course where every week you'll get a little reminder, a friendly, encouraging reminder in your inbox of here's a good step to take that's going to help you figure out your career. And they can sign up for that as well.
Well, that's probably the most substantial opt-in gift I've ever heard of.
It's pretty big.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we'll link to everything you mentioned in the show notes as well, so that'll be easy for people to find. Alison, I have one more question, but before I get to that, I just want to take a second to acknowledge you for coming on the show today and for figuring out your own path and then deciding to help others do the same in their careers. I think it's such important work that you are doing, and I've really loved diving into that in this interview. And the final question that I do have is, what one thing can listeners do this week to start their own quarter life comeback?
Sure. I've kind of already mentioned it, but I would love folks to identify their top priority in terms of fulfillment, financial health, personal time, and well-being. And then I'd also love for them to think about those 4 tiers that I mentioned: reflection, experimentation, adding a brain, or cutting the chains. Where are you? Like, be honest with yourself about what you're really needing. And hopefully that will then help you to be set up to take the correct action to get yourself moving.
I love it. We've mentioned so many actionable steps in this interview, so people really do have no excuse for not moving forward. Alison Cardy, thank you so much for coming on the Quarter Life Comeback.
You're so welcome. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So there you have it, guys and girls. That wraps up episode 41 of the Quarter Life Comeback podcast. Thanks once again to Alison Cardy for coming on and sharing a bit about her wisdom and expertise on navigating career changes. Now, if you like this one or you found real benefit from it, please share it around on social media and shoot me a tweet at Brian Tier to let me know what your biggest takeaways were. For me, it was the fact that we can start making little explorations and experiments right now by trying different things that excite us while working in a job. Now, as always, you can get the links and resources we mentioned in this episode at briantier.com/041. And if you want to get all these episodes as soon as they come out, head on over to quarterlifecomeback.com and sign up on the page. Thanks once again for spending time with me this week. And until next time, keep creating your quarter life comeback.
Thanks for listening to the Quarter Life Comeback. Get started today by visiting briantier.com.
Sorry, my cat just walked over my speakerphone just when you went to record, so I apologize.
No problem.
Okay.